This is our August 15th Bowling Green Warren County Planning Commission meeting. And Matthew, if you'd call the roll, please, sir.
Commissioner Drain? Commissioner Gay?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Starks?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Volkert?
Yes, sir.
Chair Warren?
Yes, sir. Commissioners, you have the minutes of our July 18th meeting in your packet. If there are there any questions? Hearing none, would call for a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Volkert?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Gay? Commissioner Graham?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Starks?
Abstain.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, sir.
Chair Warren?
Yes, sir. Commissioners, you have your subdivision site development plans in your packets. Are there any questions? The hearing none, then they will be approved as submitted. Mr. Peterson, we have no new business, no old business. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, we will now enter into our public hearing. Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Warren. I request that you order that the record tonight include all relevant statutory and regulatory provisions, the Commission's entire file for each application, and the qualifications for each staff witness. And finally, I'd request that you administer the oath to those witnesses.
Y'all swear to tell the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Our first item tonight is 2024-32 ZBG Haris Patel and Alfred Legacy, the owner, have filed an application to rezone 5.10 acres located southeast corner of Campbell Lane and Thoroughbred Drive from RM multifamily residential and general to business to highway business with the general development plan.
Just 1 second, Mr. Chair, I'll get this Howard up here.
Should be able to just control L.
Here we go.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. So I just want to point out that on our PowerPoint, we're trying something new. So we've added some photos to the PowerPoint. Those will be at the end of each section here, if we need them for reference, and just adding a couple more things to the PowerPoint there. So if you'll see, you might see that new for that. But we had a pre-application meeting for the property that you mentioned. We had it on July the 3rd. So the current zoning is RM4 and general business. The proposed land use is commercial, and the future land use is commercial. And the applicants are applying to rezone on the southeast corner of Campbell Lane and Thoroughbred Drive from RM4 and general business to HB in order to develop the property with multiple commercial uses, including a convenience store, fuel center, car wash, and 2 commercial buildings. The plan uses for the 2 buildings are unknown at this time, and there is a site plan that can be found on page 7 of your packet. Looking down at the property history, in 2001 the property was converted to RM4 via an amendment to the zoning ordinance, and a small portion of the property was rezoned from RM4 to GB in 2018, in case some people are recognizing part of this property with that. Looking at the bottom of the page, staff has noted considerations relating to the proposed hours of operation and the building orientation requirements along Thoroughbred Drive. However, it's our understanding that the applicant will be addressing the building orientation point to consider with you this evening. But if we look over on page 3 for the surrounding land uses, it's at the very top. So if we go back and look at the existing land use map, which is on page 10 of your packet, uses in the area are a mix of single-family residential, multifamily residential, public, and commercial. There are also vacant tracts in the vicinity. There are residential uses immediately adjacent to the proposed development to the south, east, and west. For this reason, staff suggested that the applicants consider imposing hours of operation for the proposed development. However, the applicants communicated to staff that they would prefer to operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So looking back on page 1, with that being said, the proposal complies with the majority of the criteria assessed in the review process and is generally compatible with the surrounding area. Therefore, staff recommendation is approval pending public hearing, testimony, and discussion of any of our items. That's all we have for a staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions?
I have one.
Sure.
I know the applicant has indicated that they're not revealing what the two buildings will be, simply because they're in close proximity to a school which is across the street. Do we know that those buildings will be in sync with what the surrounding businesses are? Or is
The
that a better
uses?
question for the applicant?
I think that will be a question for the applicant. Maybe they have more information on those developments
Okay,
to share.
thank you.
You're welcome.
In the original proposal, Kentucky Transportation was not present. Did they have any issues about access to Campbell Lane?
Sure. So on page 2, under the transportation infrastructure there was conversations with KYTC on that. So they're permitting one right-in, right-out access point on Campbell Lane only. And then they're further requiring the construction of a raised concrete median with bollards on Campbell Lane. And so this will have to be extended from Campbell Lane through Thoroughbred Drive. And I believe that the applicants agreed to that requirement in DPC number 9.
So it will be a right turn only, no left turn in front of the junior high, correct?
Correct. Is that right, Rachel? Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have a couple of questions, if I may.
Sure.
Let's go back to the hours of operation, the 24/7. Was there any discussion of limiting those hours to a particular type of business, to your knowledge, or were they asking for 24/7 for everything that would be built on that site?
Rachel, in your discussions, was that for the convenience and fuel station? That they were wanting the
I guess when
24/7?
we sent our original correspondence, it was just that they consider imposing hours of operation for the development as a whole, and then they just communicated back to us for the entire piece that they were desiring a 24-hour operation. But they might be able to speak to that more here in just a minute.
So that's a conversation we could have with the applicant then?
Yes.
Okay, very good. And this is a very, very minor thing, but I just want to get clarity. I think this is clearly a typo in number 3 of the GD, General Development Plans. About halfway down, it speaks to the building materials, and it says improvements on the property shall be constructed of at least 75% brick, masonry, LP smart siding or engineered woods, stones, glass, stucco, or modern construction materials such as fiber cement, board, and I think that's supposed to be or instead of split face block, correct?
I think you're right.
Okay. So in reading that, am I to understand that split face block would be an acceptable exterior material?
Correct. The building material review, it looks like on page 3, so I know it's comprised, there even is some vinyl in the area. Plain place rock shall not be permitted as visible surface material.
Okay, but, excuse me, if I understand correctly, in the sentence prior to addressing plain face blocks, it says or split face block. So my reading of that would mean that split face block would be an acceptable material under this general development plan. these GDP conditions. Do you read it
Correct.
that way? Okay.
Yeah. And I think the current development plan conditions, we've noted also, for the GB portion, these mirror what's already approved for that portion of the site.
Okay, very good. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Commissioners, any other questions? All right, thank you, Amy. Is the applicant or the representative here, and anything you would like to add?
Good evening, Commissioners. Chris Davenport, 921 College Street, and I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Amy. Let me, the original DPCs I submitted, as Rachel said, were taken from the existing GB. When you started your question, Commissioner Graham, I knew exactly where you were going because I had noted that the split face block was allowed. They do not intend to use that as a visible exterior material despite the current DPC allowing it. So I'm going to wordsmith that a little bit, if I can find it. Looking at the wrong report.
It's in number 3, Chris, about, what, halfway down, something like that?
Page 4.
So the sentence that would begin with plain face block, I will amend to neither plain face block nor split face block shall be a permitted visible surface material.
And we'll strike split face block, I assume, from the end of the previous sentence?
Correct. I knew it was in there again somewhere, yes. So it shall just say such as fiber cement board,
Period.
or I would say, or other
Yeah, that's
cementitious
fine.
product. And I think that will clarify that. As for the hours of operation, when staff commented on limiting the hours, we didn't really get into conversation as to different uses being limited. I have conferred with my client. The only desire is to allow the option of the convenience store.
Okay.
And as the concept is going to allow for other retail, I am going to offer, when I talk to them in a minute, some hours of operation limitations for uses other than the convenience store.
That'd be great.
I will also tell you, I've done a little research on this. I told Ms. Hurt this afternoon, the staff report did not mention other hours of operation in the area, and I kind of assumed that meant that there probably really weren't many restrictions. I did my best to research the area, and I can tell you I couldn't find any of the highway business or general business in the area that did have limited hours. I looked all the way down to National Road. I looked the other way towards Weston. The 2 convenience stores that are in the area that conceivably my client will be competing with is the now Casey's, used to be a Minute Mart by Weston, and the Speedway up on the corner of National Road. There are no restrictions on hours on those businesses either. So I would feel like conceding the retail hours is a fair concession on my client's part. I would submit that. I'm going to get those specifics in just a second. Other than that, I don't really have a lot to add here. This is obviously a flume compliant request. The corner's already GB. You know, we're making, I think, some favorable design restrictions on top of that. The other thing I need to point out, I do need to revise. I told staff I would do this tonight. When they gave their comments, frankly, I misread one. I thought they were asking for an orientation or a screening requirement on Campbell Lane. They asked for Campbell Lane and Thoroughbred. So DPC number, if staff finds it, they can point me out to it.
Yeah,
In 4, is it in 4?
no,
It's in 3. It's the same one. So
All structures shall either be oriented to face Campbell Lane.
I think that sentence needs to be changed to all structures shall either be oriented to face Campbell Lane or Thoroughbred Drive, and shall have side and or rear facade screened from Campbell Lane and or Thoroughbred Drive, to make sure that they're going to be oriented one way or the other, and then obviously the sides and rears will be screened. I think that'll take care of that.
Okay, and this may be a question for staff, Chris, but, so it looks like there's some multifamily in the back of this. Is that, there's a landscape requirement separating those, and does that have to be in the DPC, or is that just a part of the review process?
Just part of the review process.
Very good, okay.
We used to include that stuff. I thought it looked pretty, and then the
That's all right.
staff started telling me to take it out, because you have
That's
to do
all
it
right.
anyway.
I just wanted to make sure we had it covered, and I assumed that you did.
If there are no other questions, I'll try to iron out those non-convenience store hours real quick.
I have
Yes, sir.
related to the two buildings.
Yes, sir.
Even though we do not know what those two buildings are now, we assume that they will be businesses that are conducive to the other businesses.
I believe so, and Commissioner Starks, in your DPC number, one of your DPCs here restricts the uses, frankly, that the staff suggested might be objectionable, given the residential properties in the area. So that would be number 2.
Right.
You'll see those look very common. That's a very common set of uses we restrict in this type of circumstance.
Thank you.
Chris, when you have your discussions on hours of operation, you may want to restrict it so that you're excluding convenience store and fuel station.
Fuel cells,
Yeah.
okay. All right, nothing more, I'll have that conversation.
Just a second, Chris. Commissioners, any other questions? All right, if you'll have your discussion, then we'll talk to our audience. If you
Yeah, Mr. Patel, come on up.
need to swear you in just a minute.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Mr.
Your
Patel.
name and address, please, sir.
Hershey Patel, 3516 Abbeywood Street, Bowling Green, Kentucky, 42104.
And you swear to tell the truth.
Yes.
Put your hand up. Thank you.
Mr. Patel, did you hear the revisions that I offered to the commission earlier about the prohibition against a split-face block?
Yes.
Do you agree to that?
Yes.
You agree to sign the revised set of development conditions that include that restriction?
Yes.
Did you also hear the revision that requires properties to either orient themselves, buildings to orient themselves to Thoroughbred Drive or be screened by a buffer? Did you hear that?
Yes.
Do you agree to that also?
Yes.
And then lastly, do you agree to a new development condition? I'll make this DPC number 10 that will state hours of operations for any use other than a convenience store and/or fuel station shall be 7 days per week, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. You agreeable to that?
Yes.
And with that, I'll answer other questions if the commission has any.
All right. Mr. Moore, you got them?
Yes, sir, thank you.
You want to ask the applicant if he agrees?
I'll be happy to, thank you. Mr. Patel, you heard your lawyer recite the changes that have been made in the development plan conditions, did
Yes.
you not? And do you agree to those changes that were outlined for you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Patel. Thank you, Chris. All right. Well, excuse me, are there any more questions for the applicant and their attorney? Hearing none. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that has a question or an opposition to this request? All right. Hearing none, commissioners will call for a motion, please.
Second.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Starks,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, sir.
Chair Warren.
Yes, sir. Planning Commission final action in 21 days unless a request is made to the legislative body to hear the item. Thank you all very much. Our next item tonight is 2024-33 Z County Bowling Green Convention and Visitors Bureau. The applicant and Beech Tree Farms Incorporated, the owner, have filed an application to rezone 1.21 acres located at Ewing Way, located approximately 200 feet northwest of Ewing Ford Road, from RS1A, Single Family Residential and Highway Business, to Highway Business with a General Development Plan. Ms. Hurd?
Thank you, Chair Warren. We had a pre-application meeting back in July for the property you just referenced, located on Ewing Way and also having frontage on Cemetery Road. Looking at the aerial view, you'll see the current property and the land use is vacant, and the future land use designation is commercial. And let me jump back to the site plan really quick. We do have those pictures there at the end for reference if we need them. And the applicants have applied to rezone roughly 1.2 acres in order to develop the property with a nonprofit office space, more specifically a visitor's center. And in our review of the application, we did have a couple of items for your consideration. The first, let me jump back to page 2 and we'll look under the transportation infrastructure. So the first point to consider relates to access. Correspondence from Josh Moore, our Warren County Public Works Director, indicates that 2 access points are acceptable along Ewing Way due to the nature of the patrons visiting the site who may be driving RVs or towing large trailers. Such access points should be coordinated and approved with their department, and the applicants did agree to this requirement in the development plan conditions, but also included a prohibition on either of those 2 access points adjoining the eastern property line. So basically that if there was a second access point, it could not be shared along this property line. Staff advised against including this restriction in the development plan conditions in the event that the Warren County Public Works Department required that the 2 parcels share access. However, this was left unaddressed. Then we had another point to consider under prime farmland. Also on page 2, we've just designated that the entire property is designated as farmland of statewide importance. And then the third point for your consideration is on page 3, under the pedestrian, bicycle, or transit facilities section. And we've noted, if I jump back to the aerial view here, whoops, going the wrong way. So the greenway currently terminates here at the intersection of Lovers Lane and Cemetery Road. And the applicants did agree in their development plan conditions to install a sidewalk along Ewing Way, which will eventually connect to the current greenway on Lovers Lane. However, there is no proposed time frame as to when the sidewalk connection would occur. Going back to page 1, we've noted also under the points to consider that the proposal does comply with the majority of the criteria assessed in the review process, and we did find the application to be generally compatible with the surrounding area. And therefore, our staff recommendation is for approval pending any public hearing testimony and discussion. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hurd. Commissioners, any questions for the staff report?
So, Rachel, let's go back to the Greenway. So they've agreed to install a sidewalk, but I think I heard you asked about the connection to the existing Greenway. I may be looking at this wrong, but that looks as if it's two adjacent properties would have to be connected in order for that to happen. Am I misreading that?
You're not misreading that. The connection would have to extend further beyond the development site here. And I'm trying to find, let's see here, in the goals and objectives section under the category review, let me see, LU 213, that specific action item, if we look at page 24 of your staff report, you'll see that that particular action item encourages new developments to incorporate planned greenway links or at a minimum to provide connections to the greenway system whenever possible.
But they've not agreed to this.
No, they have.
No, they agreed to install the sidewalk, which would eventually
With no time,
connect.
but no time
But there's
frame.
no, that would leave it basically, the way it's written could essentially mean that they would wait for these properties to develop and then those property owners would install the sidewalk and that it would just gradually connect. But if those properties don't develop, then we could have years where there's no connection, so.
So does the Greenway's pathway extend beyond this property?
It currently ends right here.
Got it, okay. So if they connected it, it would go to their property and stop, is that correct? Or does it go some point beyond that?
It wouldn't go beyond that, I guess. So if they at least connected it to their property, then in the instance that this property were to develop in the future, then they would have a similar suggestion that they make that connection as well.
And I apologize, that was the most poorly worded question. Is there a greenway beyond these 4 properties? So is there a greenway to the right of this somewhere that they could connect to?
No, it continues this way up Lover's Lane.
Got it, all right, very good.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. The last question is, in the DPCs, it references, I think it says something like it will adhere to the exterior, the structure shall be residential and architectural character as determined by the Urban Growth Design Review Board. So really, the DPCs don't address any exterior, so is that it? Is it in the overlay and
It's
we're
in the
already doing that?
Yeah, it's in the Cemetery Road Overlay District.
Got it.
And so any development like this would have to go before the Design Review Board, where they would review the materials and architectural features and all that good stuff.
Makes perfect sense. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Thank you, Rachel. Commissioners, any other questions from Ms. Hurt? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is the applicant here or anything they would like to add, Mr. Davenport?
Chris Davenport on behalf of the Visitors Bureau, 921 College Street, and I swear to tell the truth. The Greenways Trail discussion, y'all, is exactly on point. When I present this to my client, you know, if I can go back to that map, they do not connect to the current terminus. I'm trying to think of properties I've been involved with that have greenways trails in the vicinity. Most commonly, it's probably the Trail Out Nashville Road that runs along there, and I don't think I've ever had a single property out there that wasn't adjacent at the time that was required to build the trail across other people's properties. I really don't think I've ever had that asked of my clients. In this case, if we did that, we're only serving this development. And to be completely frank here, the goal and what we've struck as a balance in this development, frankly, I think is a great use of the property. This is a gateway to our city. The neighbors in the area have had a lot of input on this, I will tell you, a lot of input. And some of their concerns was just the amount of parking and things like that. So I really don't know how the Greenways Trail, given the limited parking on site, the limited uses on site, we're limiting here to only a nonprofit use such as the visitor center. That coupled with the fact that I don't think I've ever had a development connect to a Greenways Trail over other people's property that was vacant. If that's occurred, I just don't recall it. I really don't think that has occurred. So we did include the language that it would eventually connect. That is the intention. And I would submit to you that when it does eventually connect, it will be when these other properties are developed and the use would be more deserving of the trail, frankly. That would be my opinion on the matter. As for the materials, that overlay district is kind of like the Cadillac of review criteria. When you develop in this overlay district, the engineers have a lot of work in front of them, let's just put it that way. So what we do have in there is the residential architectural nature, because we want it to fit in as much as possible with that residential area behind it. Other than that, I'll take any questions. Again, I'm happy to represent this and present this application. I think that's going to be a really cool use of this area.
Chris, the visitor center, it's out on Cumberland,
Three Springs.
Three Springs now. Will this be replacing that?
Correct.
Okay. And approximately, how many people, very approximate, how many people show up a day or a week or?
Sherry, would you like to speak to that?
Just approximate.
Do I need to come up?
Sure. Just speak to the
Yes,
microphone
ma'am.
so I can hear you.
And your name,
Sherry Murphy, 352 Three Springs Road.
Sherry, you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Yeah, just approximately, how many?
We wrote a letter to the HOA association that's behind us, and so we did an actual visitor count annually.
Yeah.
And we roughly see, I think it's 900 visitors annually over a 12-month period
Okay.
during the limited operations that we have.
So 75 a month. Okay, all right. All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
So I don't really have much to add here. Again, I'm glad to be a part of this. So if you have any questions, I'll answer those.
So
Thank-
Chris, if I may, one last question regarding, there was some discussion about access points. Would you add some color to that?
So this is a balancing act really between buyer and seller, okay? The seller of this property owns this property right here.
That's when we tried they wanted to put a hotel in about 10 years ago.
I think that's correct, some time ago. That's already zoned HB, as this part of this property is also. And so the request they made was that any access not be adjoining. That's the request they're making for the remainder of their property. And of course, these conditions have to be agreed upon by all parties. And the buyer agreed to that development condition. So they're on accord on that. And I would just simply say that from Josh Moore's perspective, that development condition still requires that the access points be approved and coordinated by Warren County Public Works.
Okay.
We're not trying to get around that. And it may be that the development comes in with just one access point for a time. I'll note that the overlay requirements, again, back to the Cadillac of requirements, requires connection between the two lots. And that's very important here. So if Warren County Works does not like the proposed location of the second access point, they don't have to approve it. And in that event, it would probably be sometime in the future when the second lot's developed that connectivity would be finished, and then there would be 2 points serving both lots, if you follow my logic there. So that's a compromise between the buyer and seller. Frankly, I think it's reasonable because it takes none of the authority away from the county to approve those spots.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Davenport? Or
I have one. Chris, what will determine when the sidewalks are developed? And the second part of that is who will develop those?
So the developer will have to put the sidewalk in when they develop. The eventuality is when it connects. So that may be a little bit less than clear. They'll have to put the sidewalk in when the development gets made. And frankly, it'll be kind of a sidewalk to nowhere for a while. That's conceded. But they got to do their job to build their part.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. All right. Commissioners, no other questions? Is there anyone in the audience tonight that has a opposition or a question of this request? All right. Hearing none, Commissioners, would call for a motion, please.
Make the motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with the condition upon the general development plan document number 2024-33CCO. Based on the testimony and documents presented in the public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with the objectives and action items presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request this motion to include the summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second.
Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Starks,
Yes.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, sir.
Chair Warren.
Yes, sir. The motion is approved. Planning Commission final action in 21 days unless the request is made for a legislative body to hear the item. Mr. Peterson, any other items tonight?
Yes, sir.
All right. So we'll see everybody in September. Thank you all for all being here tonight, and we are adjourned.